Hi guys, welcome back to the Bird Photography Show with Glenn Bartley.
Hello.
And me, Jan Wegener.
We hope you guys enjoyed the last episode where we talked all about computers. Hopefully you picked up a few tips, whether you're buying a new computer or maybe some performance tips for making your computer a little faster, but hopefully you learned a few things. And as always, thanks for subscribing and supporting our coffee addiction.
So Glenn, you're going to Panama next week. What is it about South America that fascinates you so much? You've really become an expert in that neotropical birding scene.
I'm definitely mostly known for my sort of South America portfolio, and it's just a region that I really have come to love. I first traveled there about 20 years ago and just fell in love with some of the birds, all of the hummingbirds, the tanagers, the toucans, just some amazing families of birds, tons of diversity. There's more than 3,000 species of birds in South America, so there's lots to keep you busy. And I've just had so many good experiences down there that it just keeps me going back for more.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a few more birds to photograph. After literally years of not traveling, you picked Panama as your first location to go back. What's so special about Panama? Why Panama?
It's like this sort of gateway between, Costa Rica and sort of the rest of Central America, and then going down into South America, sort of Panama. For those of you who South American geography is not great, it's sort of as it heads south, it enters into Colombia, which is of course the country in the world that has the most birds of all. And so Panama is this nice mix where you get a lot of your familiar kind of Central American species, but it also starts to get some of those, South American birds coming up in there. There's almost 1,000 species of birds in Panama, so quite diverse for such a small country. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting down there and getting to work.
So are there some particular targets that you have there? Like, did you just pick it for the diversity, or is there a few birds you say, yeah, I'm gonna have to nail those to make it a successful trip?
There's one that's actually a monotypic genus. It's a single species in this genus called the wren thrush or the Zelidonia. So that would be a nice one to pick up. It only lives in Costa Rica and Panama. I'm hoping to find it when I go up into the highlands in Panama. Another one I'm really hoping to track down, because you probably can relate to this, Jan. When you've seen a bird well, but you didn't get a good photo of it, it actually haunts you more. Like you were there, you saw it, you just didn't get a shot. So many years ago, when I was in Costa Rica, I saw this beautiful ocellated antbird. It's this stunning species of antbird, and it's just haunted me ever since. So Panama is meant to be quite a good place for it. So I'm hoping that when I get back, I'll be able to show you guys some good shots and hopefully some video as well of an ocellated antbird.
And you know what's even worse? I'm sure our viewers can relate to that as well. If you've actually seen the bird in your viewfinder in a good pose and you were just too slow to hit the shutter button and you only get like the bum shot, but when you close your eyes, you're seeing like the perfect pose right in front of you. I still have a few of those memories that I have to revisit from time to time, but it's not fun.
Yeah, that's the next level for sure. Like, it's something about, like, if you're after a bird and you don't even find it, you don't even hear it, it's just not there. You can kind of live with that. But when it was there and you just didn't get the shot, it really hurts. So yeah, there's a bunch of other birds, of course. Black-crowned antpitta would be amazing to get some good shots of. Let me think, what else is on my
hummingbirds?
There definitely are. There's a lot of species of hummingbirds in Panama, but as I sort of mentioned, many of them have already photographed elsewhere. But there are a few sort of specific ones that are sort of regional endemics. Snowy-bellied hummingbird is supposedly very common in Panama. I've never seen it anywhere else, so that would be nice. There's a few others that I'm sure I'll come back with some shots, but I'm not really like focusing on hummingbirds on this trip for sure.
So when you come back, we definitely expect to see a photo of that snowy-bellied hummingbird.
Okay, I'll do my best. I think that one I can pretty much guarantee though.
All right, then the antbird as well, of course.
Well, we'll see what we can do. That's certainly going to try. Let me tell you about what it's like photographing antbirds though, because they follow around army ant swarms. So army ants raid out through the forest, and these antbirds follow these swarms, and as the ants are raiding around, they scare other insects and cockroaches and frogs and everything else is like trying to get out of the way of these army ants. And the birds are just sitting there like, oh, thanks for the free meal. And they just drop down. So if you find a good army ant swarm, there's some of these birds, like the ocellated antbird, that's where you're going to find them. You're probably not going to find them anywhere else. Now, what does that mean as a photographer? It means you have to be in there with all the ants crawling up your legs, anything you touch, because the ants go up the trees, they go everywhere. So even if you're like leaning up against a tree, next thing you know, there's ants on you, and they're mean, they'll bite you. So it can be very dense too, like the ants go wherever they want. So it can be like super dense foliage and like you can see kind of where the birds are, but you can't find a window. So it can be very challenging, but if you hit just the right spot and you find a swarm and it's kind of open forest, that's really what I'm hoping for down there.
So you already mentioned the conditions a little bit, but I guess all of us kind of expect dark rainforest conditions, high ISO, and then Glenn running in the middle of an ant swarm with a big 600mm lens on his shoulder. It seems like it's pretty challenging to even maneuver that big lens around. Would you say that's true?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that's again the thing, like you see these photos and you don't understand that like literally you could do this at home. Take your hands like this and imagine looking through that, because that's literally what you're trying to do, to find a window to get the bird, and hopefully it sits there for long enough that you can find a little window to shoot through. And it can be so frustrating when you just can't line the bird up. It's there, it's close to you. It's not easy. These aren't birds that are coming to feeders or out in the open. These are challenging understory conditions. So you have to get lucky to a certain extent as well, because the birds are going to do what they're going to do.
So you must be pretty excited that now you can take your R5 into the rainforest with the great autofocus, the high ISO capabilities, because I can't even imagine what it would have been like with a 7D Mark II in those kind of ant swarm middle of the rainforest conditions.
It is very dark at times, and if it's not dark, it probably means you're dealing with really patchy light, and that can be even more challenging. So the ability now to shoot comfortably at 3200, 6400, 12,800, it's just, I couldn't have even imagined that in 2-3 years ago with my old camera.
So with our new workflow with DxO, our PROSETS and our normal Photoshop editing workflow, you might even get away with like 25,600 or even higher ISO, one would think. Like if in an emergency kind of situation, you could probably push it that far.
Probably, but honestly, I don't even know if I can make my brain like turn it that far. Like it's like going even 12,800, I'm kind of having to be like, oh, is this okay? But it is,
It is.
Like we've both done testing and it totally is.
I've never been to South America. Have you guys? Do you have a favorite place down there? Let us know in the comments. So for us who would love to go to South America, but have never actually been and might be a little bit unsure what it's like, do you have like some traveling tips, some advice?
So first of all, most of South America, with the exception of Brazil, where Portuguese is the main language, everywhere else speaks Spanish. So if you're going to go down there by yourself, especially if you're going to try to do like a self-guided tour and rent a car and stuff like that, I mean, you're going to really want to learn some Spanish. I don't think I'd feel comfortable just going off on my own and not speaking any Spanish. So that would be my number one tip for sure. And if you don't know any Spanish, then you're probably going to be better off hiring a local guide to take you around. Like we talked about in one of our past episodes, I think it was episode 6, where we talked about, how we prepare for trips and stuff. You can reference that, but definitely, whenever you're going to go do bird photography somewhere else, whether it's South America or Africa or Antarctica, it doesn't matter. You need to do your homework, you need to do your research. You need to know the birds as well as possible without actually being there. So you need to study your field guides, do lots of research online, and know the birds that you're after, where you're likely to find them. So that is, again, invaluable. Going with someone who's already put in the time on the ground and done all the work to suss out the best spots with the best locations, with the best birds, it makes a lot of sense. Then in like a 10-day or a 2-week trip, you can be super successful and get great shots. Whereas if you went on your own, it could be a disaster.
I remember all your old travel vlogs. I don't know if you guys seen it, but it's still on Glenn's YouTube channel. And it looks pretty rough at times, like not necessarily the people or anything, but just the environment, the roads, it's raining, it's all washed out, you get bogged. So is it generally safe? Like, it never looked like you had any real trouble or anything, but it looks quite adventurous at times.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been very lucky, but I also, as I mentioned, do my homework, and I practice common sense, sort of travel safety stuff, and I've never had any issues. I remember going to Costa Rica the first time and being like, oh yeah, it's like, only like 50 kilometers between here and there. That'll take like an hour. And then you're like 4 hours later, you're not even there yet. Because yeah, the roads can be definitely a much more of an adventure. So, but that's all part of the fun, that's all part of the challenge. That's all part of the journey. And yeah, but best to do your homework before you show up with a Toyota Yaris.
Do you generally have phone reception there, or is it like Australia where you leave the big city, a minute later, no reception, it's all dead?
It's hit and miss in the Andes for sure. I mean, if you get in the wrong little valley where there's no cell towers, yeah, you can definitely. But overall, every year that goes by, when I first started traveling, there was no Wi-Fi, nobody had smartphones. You'd have to go to the internet cafes in town, and but now, usually, like when I get down there, the first thing I'll do is grab a chip for my phone, pop it in, get it like a data plan for a month or whatever. And I mean, in Canada, we pay some of the highest cell rates in the world. So it's actually like cheaper down there to have a data plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not going to be perfect and work everywhere, but overall for what I need it for just sort of like WhatsApp and, Google Maps and stuff like that, it should be fine.
So it sounds actually better than down here, because whenever we try to talk on the phone when I'm on the road, it just doesn't work, because every 2 seconds I'm cutting out. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about traveling as a photographer. I think we've all experienced the pain. You have about 100 kilos of gear, and you all want to put it into one backpack, and the allowance is like 7 kilos for your carry-on. So how do you do it? I know you take a lot of gear down there, especially when you teach workshops. You take 100 tripods with you, literally. So how do you do it?
Okay, so for the tours, I've always kind of had this. Those tripods are pretty cheap, so over the years I've deposited them in many countries. Like I literally have 12 in Ecuador, I have 12 in Colombia, I have 12 in Brazil, I have 12 in Costa Rica. I have them all over the place, because it's not worth flying them back and forth if it's like an extra bag of weight. It's better just to leave them there, and then you have to worry about it again. So I just leave those tripods wherever. But as far as my normal gear goes, luckily, so the carry-on restrictions are different in different parts of the world. I know like Africa and Europe is very restrictive. I'm not sure about Australia. But usually, I believe here, 10 kilos, I think you're allowed to have your main one. Oof, and you're allowed to have two, like a carry-on and a personal item. So for me, my carry-on is my backpack that has all of my main lenses and cameras and everything in it. It is not 10 kilos. It is way more than that, but I've very rarely had people weigh it. The other bag that I carry on is like a smaller one. It definitely does not fit in their little sizing thing, but again, I haven't had too many people harass me about it. But the key with that one is it has wheels and like one of those handles that pulls up. So that way when I'm in the airports and stuff, and like if you have a big layover and you're walking around doing stuff, I take my backpack and I put it on top of that one, and then I have this like bungee cord thing, and then I can roll it around and not have to be like, because the backpack, as we mentioned, is not 10 kilos. It's probably more like 20 kilos. Typically on almost every trip, I'm probably going to be checking two sort of 23 kilo bags. So between sort of the basically, more or less 50 kilos of checked luggage plus my carry-on, I've always been able to kind of bring what I need.
Yeah, I had issues a couple times. The first time was actually in Norway, in Oslo at the airport, and the guy just is like, you can grab this lens by the foot and swing it around and like kill people. And so I had to talk to him for like 15 minutes, and he's like, no, you have to check it. And outside I'm seeing the people like dropping the suitcases on the field and falling out of the plane. I'm like, I really don't want to check it. And then eventually he let me through. And in Australia, it's pretty restrictive. It's usually 7 kilos, and half the time they make you weigh it, and you always have to like just try and sneak through somehow. But for me, the main tip is with the really big lens, And since I've done that, I don't have trouble anymore. I don't put the lens hood in my backpack. And I actually removed the foot since that experience in Norway at the airport. So the lens is a lot flatter and doesn't have the shape with the handle like a rocket launcher kind of thing.
Yeah.
And since then, I've gone through without problems really. And it actually makes your backpack a lot flatter, because usually when you have the foot on there and the hood, it's bulging a fair bit at the top. And what I usually do with the hood, I actually slide it on top of my tripod legs.
That's exactly
spread
what
them
I
out,
do.
and then stuff a lot of underwear, socks, whatever, right into the middle of the hood. And I don't even have a hard case, and there was never any issues with the hood.
If you ever do have a gate agent who is asking you to check your bag, the most important thing is to just be super friendly, super calm, never get excited, or certainly don't ever sound angry, because you have to realize like this person's just doing their job that the airline told them to do.
That's exactly my experience. Whenever I got pulled up, it's an uncomfortable, lengthy discussion, but in the end, they usually say, okay, this time, but not next time. And you're like, okay. And then you get through. And I think another trick is obviously just put it on like one shoulder and just happy smile, walk like
look
it's
as if
weighing
it's
nothing, like, oh, look at that light back. I can just sling it around like that.
The other thing you can do sometimes, if you want to be very friendly with a flight attendant, you can say, because they always have like a storage area at the front of the plane for their own stuff. And I've definitely many times asked them to set it in there, and then you just get it when you're going off the plane. All right, guys, so now let's talk about when you're going on a trip, a few things that you really don't want to leave at home. And by that, I mean some of our top essential travel items. So for me, you know, it starts with the trip itself. So I love, after doing so many trips, especially like overnight long flights. I mean, Toronto to Brazil is like 10 hours. Toronto to Santiago, Chile, 10 hours, 11 hours. I couldn't be without my nice Bose noise canceling headphones, a nice little travel pillow, and if it's an overnight flight, I like my sleeping mask so I can fall asleep and drool on the person next to me's shoulder. So that's definitely some good travel accessories.
Very nice mental picture there.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one for me. What about you? Let's throw it back to you, Jan.
Yeah, definitely. I like to have some sort of noise cancelling headphones as well. But you could even have little earbuds like this if you don't want to go really expensive. There's some pretty good options now. And for me, I usually just focus on some key things I need in the field. I usually take like this tiny little travel towel with me, like microfiber, that actually folds up to quite decent size. So even if you fall into like a little stream or something, you can have that with you. So I think some of these things can be quite handy to just have in your backpack. And then I found this pair of like foldable clippers a few years ago that I thought was pretty handy.
Oh, nice.
That folds up pretty small, and when you need to do a setup or you need to cut something, you can take these. And I always take some cable ties with me as well, because not just if I want to do a setup at a feeder or something, but also if something breaks, your back breaks, like it's very, very good items to have with you.
Definitely, yeah. I always have a little sort of Tupperware with like useful little items, just generic random stuff. Even like I have like little things of 2-part epoxy for fixing things, and because things break. I mean, especially on longer trips where you're pushing your gear to the limits, things break. Another thing that I think is indispensable on a trip like this, like I'm about to go on, is sort of good, appropriate footwear. Sometimes you see people and they're just like have, not the best footwear. I just, find a good pair of waterproof hiking boots that fits your feet well and that's comfortable, and go with those. And that's probably what I would recommend and would always not be without.
So what backpack do you actually take when traveling as you carry on? Do you just take one backpack, or do you take maybe two, like a smaller one and a bigger one, or how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So my main backpack, I've always had low pro backpacks. I found them to be really good bags, and so I think it's a Pro Trekker 450, I think, and the top part comes off and is actually the fanny pack that I typically use, but that usually gets checked. So I just have the main bag when I go on the flight, and inside of that, I actually take all of the dividers out. Because I can fit way more stuff in there. And what I like to do is these are some little like travel pouches that a company called Lens Coat makes. All of my equipment, the lenses, the camera bodies, even my binoculars is wrapped up in these. And so I can put everything in there and you can fit way more stuff without dividers. So that's maybe a useful tip for some people.
Now that's awesome. I've got a few of those as well. And when I travel, I used to use a Low Pro as well. I think I had like a Compute Tracker, but they used to make like a large version of it that would just fit my 600, but they don't make it anymore. And I literally had that backpack for like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, but then eventually the zippers just broke because I always cramped my big 600 in there and it wasn't really made for it, but that was really good. But recently I just got a couple f-stop backpacks. This one, I thought I don't really need it. Why do I need a small backpack? But it has become my favorite backpack, especially now with the 100 to 500. I can just pop it on. I could still fit my drone in here if I needed to as well. It's a really nice little light backpack that's like, I think it's a Guru and it's like 30 liters or something. And the cool thing is, first of all, they're made so they're always lying on the front. You never have to lie them down on the back, right? So your back gets never wet. And then they have these departments inside and you can buy different ones, right? They're not pre-made. You can just buy separate ICU units and design them whichever way you want. And then that closes like that. You put that on your back. That's really cool. And so that's my favorite one to just get around. And then for travel, I've gotten this one. I haven't actually traveled with it yet, but I will very soon. So it's just like a larger version. I think this is like, it's hard to pronounce. It's spelled AJNA. Maybe you want to give that a go.
Ajna.
That's what I would have said as well. Something like Ajna or something like that. So let's go with that. And same thing, just a larger version with a bigger ICU unit inside. And that should still just fit my 600. And what I like as well, they have a lot of space at the top. So I actually have a third one of these as well that fits my 600 to 100 to 500 and the drone. So they've been very flexible and very good for me. And that's what I'm going with at the moment.
Nice. And yeah, as you mentioned, I do often also bring another small lightweight backpack because when I'm actually out in the field, I don't want that huge backpack. Typically, I want like a smaller thing with just like some water and some snacks and my rain cover and those kinds of things. Okay, so my last essential item, which is definitely a must-have, is a good pair of binoculars.
We were all waiting for the fanny pack here, obviously.
I know, it's true, but I've already spouted about the joy of having a wonderful fanny pack, and so you guys all know that already. So I thought I'd mix it up.
Okay.
These sweet babies from Swarovski are definitely the best binoculars I've ever seen or used. They're so nice. These are the new NL Pure ones from Swarovski. They're incredible. They're like I don't even know how they do this. Like that this like contour doesn't mess up the optics of it. It literally feels like it's just molded to fit your hand. They're so nice, and they actually have this little. I don't know if I'm gonna use this all the time.
I was just
but I thought I'd give
ask
it a try.
about it. I was just gonna say, what's that?
So they call it a forehead rest. And so basically it just gives you, because these are 10 times ones, so they're quite a bit of magnification. And sometimes when you're like, I guess one of the ideas is that you can use them with one hand and you can kind of push the forehead rest up. So you're like super, hello everybody. You can be really stable. Like I said, it's sort of a new product I think that they're trying out, and I'm going to try it on this trip and see if I like it, but it just pops off. If you don't want to use it, you just pull it off. But these are amazing, so very happy to have these beautiful binoculars, and whether you buy something that extravagant or just a good quality pair, having a good pair of binoculars in the field is a must.
Now that we talked so much about what to take, what's like items you would say don't take? You don't need them. You're just gonna weigh down your bags, and it actually makes travel uncomfortable. Like I remember leading a workshop and someone literally rolled up there and had like 35 lenses in their backpack that they all just bought basically. So I'm like, maybe that's not the ideal way to go, especially when you're flying. Like you want to pack as light as possible and find lenses that do a lot of jobs in the one lens. Like you don't want to take 8 different prime lenses that cover you from like 16 to 70 millimeters. It's probably better to take a zoom.
We're both gonna have our 600. We're gonna have a mid-range zoom, for me the 100 to 400, for you the 100 to 500, and a wide angle. And that's all you need. Like for us, maybe if you were like doing all kinds of other wildlife photography, maybe you throw in a macro lens too. But I can't see ever traveling with more than 3 or most 4 lenses. As far as what I think a lot of people will get hung up on bringing too much of is too many heavy clothing items. Like if you're traveling a lot, you should have lightweight kind of hiking, technical fabric types of clothes that are sort of can be layered and are multi-purpose, and you can wash them and dry them quickly. And you don't need to bring all the clothes you need for a 3-week trip. You can do laundry and just have stuff that dries quickly. And so for me, like my clothes could literally probably fit in a small backpack like this, and all the rest is gear. So I don't waste space or weight on clothes.
That's the funniest thing, isn't it? With photographers, we always say, oh, we travel with so much stuff. But if we actually didn't travel with any photography stuff, we could literally have like one tiny little bag as a carry-on, and traveling would never be a problem.
Totally. Totally, yeah. If you took all the gear out, it's like one carry-on little backpack.
Yeah. So I think that wraps up today's episode about traveling. We're all excited to see what Glenn's going to be able to photograph in Panama and how the trip goes, how you go with the new memory cards that you're trying out. So there's a lot of things you will report back to us once you're back here. And like always, we thank all of you for subscribing, liking, and sharing the video. And also, we still like our coffee, so whoever bought us a coffee already, we really appreciate that. And I think we can say we see you in the next video. Bye, guys.
See you next time, guys. Wish me luck in Panama.